So, what if I told you that the single biggest driver of a company's revenue isn't their supply chain, it's not their marketing budget, and it's not the visionary genius of their CEO either?
Right, which is what everyone assumes.
Exactly. What if the real engine determining whether a business, thrives or dies is actually the department that makes you fill out a form when you lose your ID badge?
Yeah, I mean, we really have to completely discard the old mental model of human resources here.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your baseline assumption is that HR is just the compliance police,
The administrative paper pushers?
right, the people sending out those mandatory training videos,
Yeah.
if that's what you think, you are missing the most massive paradigm shift in the modern corporate world.
And, well, that shift is exactly what we are unpacking in today's deep dive. We're digging into the research of Dr. Jonathan H. Westover, specifically his work on the rise of the strategic CHRO.
Yeah.
And for anyone tuning in who isn't buried in corporate acronyms every single day, CHRO is the Chief Human Resources Officer. And honestly, this research is wild.
It really is. I love the background you just switched to, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah, I thought it fit the vibe.
It totally does. That dynamic modern cityscape, overlaid with those pulsing digital connection nodes, it is basically the perfect visual for what we're talking about today.
It feels like a living system, right? Not just a static organization chart.
Exactly. It represents this incredibly complex web of human capital. Because in today's knowledge economy, physical assets and financial capital, they just aren't the primary value drivers anymore.
Like, you can't just rely on owning the biggest factory.
Right. I mean, you can buy the exact same software as your competitor. You can rent the exact same server space. What separates a thriving organization from a dying one is human creativity. It's innovation. It's agility.
So the people.
The people. A company isn't just a building or a product line anymore. It's a living, breathing network of human potential. And the person architecting that network, the one actually designing it, is the strategic HR leader.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because calling HR strategic sounds, fantastic in a corporate mission statement. But let's be real here.
Sure.
Why should a CEO actually care? Like, when you are sitting in a boardroom looking at quarterly earnings, where is the hard financial proof that elevating HR isn't just corporate fluff?
Oh, the empirical evidence from Dr. Westover's research is staggering. It's not fluff at all. Implementing high-performance HR practices is directly linked to a 4.6% increase in return on assets.
Wait, stop right there, because return on assets is one of those terms that sounds really dry until you realize what an asset actually is today, right?
Yeah.
Like 50 years ago, an asset was literally a machine stamping out steel parts. If you made the machine 4% more efficient, you made millions. But today, the asset is the collective brains of your engineering team or your marketing department.
Which is why that 4.6% bump is so monumental. And the data goes even further than that. If you look at organizations that sit in the top quartile of HR effectiveness, they don't just have, happier employees who smile more in the break room.
Right, it's not just about good vibes.
No, they actually see 26% higher revenue per employee.
Wow, 26%.
Yeah, and critically, they experience 40% lower turnover compared to companies in the bottom quartile.
40% lower turnover is massive, especially when you factor in the sheer cost of, recruiting, interviewing, onboarding, and training a replacement.
It's incredibly expensive to replace good people.
But I want to connect the dots here for the listener. How does a specific HR policy structurally create revenue? Like, mechanically, how does that work?
Let's look at the mechanics of 3M.
Yeah.
They are legendary for their breakthrough innovations. Things like the optical films and the screens we use every day, or Post-it notes.
Oh, yeah, the classic Post-it note story.
Right. But that constant innovation doesn't just happen organically. It is directly tied to a structural HR practice, which is their 15% time policy.
Right.
HR established a framework that allows technical employees to spend 15% of their working hours on projects of their own choosing.
Which, okay, from a traditional management perspective, sounds absolutely terrifying.
Oh, totally.
You are essentially telling managers to let their highest paid people waste almost a full day a week on unauthorized side quests.
And that is exactly the friction. A traditional operations manager would immediately try to, optimize that 15% out of the system just to boost short-term productivity.
Got to hit those quarterly metrics.
Right. But the strategic HR team recognized that you cannot mandate breakthrough creativity from the top down. You can't just say, be creative today between 2 and 3 p.m.
Yeah, that never works.
You have to architect an environment that gives people the operational slack to experiment. So HR had to actually design the performance metrics so managers wouldn't penalize employees for utilizing that time.
Oh, that's smart. So they protected the innovators from the middle manager.
Exactly. And that single, heavily protected HR policy is literally the engine behind billions of dollars in revenue for 3M.
That's incredible. And Starbucks is another great example of this causal link from the source material. They built their entire business model around the idea that the employee experience dictates the customer experience.
Yes, the partner model.
Right. So their HR strategy was to treat their baristas not as disposable hourly labor, but as partners who receive actual equity and comprehensive benefits. And what I found fascinating in the data is how that translates. Workforces with that level of engagement showed 10% higher customer ratings.
And 20% higher sales.
20%, that's huge.
Yeah, they aren't offering stock options just to be benevolent. The HR leadership understands the mechanical link there. If a barista has a tangible stake in the company and they feel economically secure, their stress levels drop.
Yeah, they aren't worrying about making rent while making your macchiato.
Exactly. And their interaction with the customer fundamentally changes. They deliver the kind of micro-interactions that make a customer choose that specific coffee shop every single morning instead of the one across the street.
It makes me think of an analogy. Old school HR is essentially like a building inspector.
Okay, I like this.
They show up with a clipboard, making sure you don't violate the labor code, ensuring nobody gets sued, checking the proverbial fire exits. But strategic HR, they are the lead architect.
Yes.
They're actually designing the building so that people flow through it perfectly, they bump into each other in the right collaborative spaces, and they do their absolute best work.
That's spot on. The inspector prevents disaster, but the architect enables greatness.
But so if we agree that the architect creates immense financial value, it brings up a huge operational challenge. The market moves incredibly fast right now.
Faster than ever.
Yeah. So how does HR actually predict what kind of building the company will need in 5 years?
Well, this is where we step into the realm of strategic workforce planning. The legacy approach was just simple headcount forecasting. Like a manager would say, hey, we expect to grow 10% next year, so we need 10 more salespeople.
Right, just basic math.
But the new model relies on predictive analytics. They map out capability needs 3 to 5 years down the road.
Break down capability mapping for me. What does that actually look like in practice for a business?
Let's take Bristol-Myers Squibb. Their business strategy dictated a massive pivot toward oncology and immunology.
So cancer and immune drugs.
Right. And the HR leadership didn't just sit back and wait for a memo telling them to post a few job listings for scientists. They audited the entire organization. They mapped the exact sub-disciplines of biological research they'd need.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they mapped out the specific regulatory knowledge required to get those kinds of cancer drugs approved. Even the commercial skills needed to sell them.
So they looked at what they had versus what they were going to need.
Exactly. They identified the gap between their current chemical-based workforce and the biological workforce they would need in the future. And then they proactively built targeted partnerships with academic medical centers. They designed upskilling programs for their existing staff years before those drugs even hit phase 2 trials.
Years before. MasterCard did something very similar, according to the notes we have. Back in 2019, long before it was front-page news, their HR team forecasted a critical future need for cloud architecture and blockchain skills.
Well, they saw it coming.
And they didn't wait to fight over the incredibly tiny pool of external blockchain experts in the open market.
Because that's a bidding war you lose.
Exactly. So HR partnered with the business leaders to create internal mobility pathways. They literally built their own talent pipeline so that when the shortage hit the rest of the tech industry, MasterCard was already staffed.
It's brilliant risk mitigation.
But, okay, I hear the logic in teaching a software engineer about blockchain or teaching a chemist about immunology.
Yeah.
But let me push back a little here.
Sure, go for it.
You can teach technical skills. You cannot just teach someone how to navigate the terrifying ambiguity of, say, a market crash or a pandemic or a sudden hostile takeover. Sometimes a business just needs leaders who have the instinct and the resilience to steer the ship. How does HR build that? Because you certainly can't send a manager to a weekend seminar on how to be a visionary.
No, definitely not. The classroom is essentially useless for building true resilience. Leadership development is perhaps the most critical domain of a strategic CHRO, and they approach it through systematic engineering.
Systematic engineering.
Yeah, you build leaders through action learning and stretch assignments,
Meaning you actually throw them into the fire.
deliberately and strategically.
Yeah.
It involves organizing cross-functional teams of high-potential employees and assigning them to solve real high-stakes business problems that are completely outside their normal scope.
Like giving them a problem they have no business solving.
Exactly. General Electric's Crotonville Center is kind of the historical gold standard here. They built a literal pipeline of leaders by combining intense business strategy challenges with direct exposure to senior executives.
Right.
But if we look at contemporary examples, Unilever's approach is just a masterclass in structural engineering.
Unilever tackled the diversity pipeline, right?
They did. They identified a massive vulnerability. Women and people of color were severely underrepresented in senior roles. Now, the traditional HR response to that is a superficial PR campaign or maybe a single mandatory training session.
Right, checking the compliance box again.
Exactly. But Unilever bypassed the PR and went straight to the structural architecture. They engineered formal sponsorships. They paired diverse talent with top executives to ensure they were actually getting those high-stakes stretch assignments.
Oh, that makes sense.
And more importantly, they created flexible career paths that accommodated caregiving without pausing a person's career momentum.
So what does this all mean? If you remove the penalty for, taking maternity leave or taking time to care for an aging parent, you stop bleeding top talent.
That's the key. By architecting that inclusive pipeline and removing the structural barriers, they raised the number of women in management from 38% to 50% over a decade.
Which tells me these companies aren't just getting lucky with their leadership pool. They are literally manufacturing great leaders on an assembly line of curated experiences.
That's a great way to put it.
They are designing the exact trials and tribulations a person needs to become the CEO 5 years from now.
The curation is absolutely relentless. But here is the catch.
Uh-oh.
You can have brilliant leaders, and you can have a perfectly upskilled, blockchain-certified workforce. But if the internal environment of the company is toxic or resistant to change, all of that potential is destroyed.
Right.
And this brings us to culture architecture.
As they say, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
It devours it. And the fundamental misconception is that culture just happens organically, kind of like the weather.
Right, like you just put people in a room and hope for the best.
But strategic HR leaders know that culture is a system. It is engineered through specific hiring criteria, onboarding experiences, and crucially, the performance metrics that dictate what behaviors are actually rewarded.
I think the most vivid turnaround story involving culture has to be Microsoft under Satya Nadella.
Oh, absolutely.
When I was reading the source material, what struck me wasn't just that the old culture was bad, but how the actual HR mechanisms actively forced people to be toxic.
Yes, you are talking about their old performance management system, the force ranking or stack ranking.
Right, because mechanically, forced ranking meant managers had to grade their employees on a strict curve.
Yeah.
So even if I am on a team of 5 absolute geniuses who hit every single goal, the system legally required the manager to label someone as a top performer and label someone else at the bottom as a failure.
It bred sheer paranoia. Think about it. If helping your teammates succeed meant they might get the top spot and push you to the bottom.
You actively withheld information.
Exactly. It crippled their collaboration and stalled their innovation for a decade. So when Nadella took over, he and his HR leadership systematically dismantled that environment. They abolished the stack ranking system entirely.
Which overnight removes the incentive to sabotage your coworker?
Right. And then they changed the hiring criteria to select for curiosity and resilience rather than just raw technical arrogance.
Wow.
They explicitly engineered a growth mindset culture. They trained managers to shift from being evaluators who just judge past performance to coaches who remove future roadblocks.
That's a huge psychological shift.
But replacing the psychological operating system from fear to learning, they unlocked their workforce and literally tripled the company's market value.
Tripled. And that cultural resilience is really the only way a company survives massive traumatic change. Like, think about CVS Health. A few years ago, they made the massive strategic decision to stop selling tobacco products in all their stores.
And position themselves as a true healthcare company.
Right. But that was a pivot that cost them $2 billion in annual revenue right off the top.
$2 billion.
It's unbelievable. But think about the ripple effect. If you are a pharmacy tech working the register in a CVS, suddenly you are the one facing thousands of angry, confused customers who just want to buy their cigarettes.
Right, and they're taking it out on you.
Exactly. If HR had just sent out a corporate email saying, hey, we don't sell tobacco anymore, please deal with it, the turnover at the store level would have been apocalyptic.
Oh, people would have quit on the spot.
Yeah.
But HR didn't just manage the paperwork of the pivot. They designed the psychological safety net for the frontline workers.
How did they do that?
They built comprehensive training programs featuring role-playing and scripting, so the pharmacy staff knew exactly how to de-escalate those customer reactions.
Oh, that's brilliant. Give them a script.
Yeah, and they created internal recognition programs celebrating the company's new health mission. They ensured employees felt like heroes championing public health rather than just punching bags for angry smokers.
And they used those exact same culture-building muscles a few years later during the massive Aetna acquisition, right?
Exactly. Integrating 50,000 health insurance employees with 300,000 retail employees is a recipe for culture clash. But HR actively established a shared purpose to keep a massive corporate shock from destroying employee morale.
Now, if you're listening to this and sitting at your desk right now at 2 p.m. trying to clear your inbox, you're probably wondering how any of the C-suite strategy actually impacts your Tuesday.
Right.
We've talked about billions of dollars in CEO philosophies, but how does the strategic CHRO change the daily grind of an average employee?
It changes everything through employee experience design, or EX. Strategic HR takes the exact same sophisticated principles a company uses to map a customer's journey and points them inward at the staff.
Like mapping the user interface of the actual job?
Precisely. Airbnb is a pioneer here.
Yeah.
They don't even have a traditional human resources department. They have an employee experience team.
Oh, interesting.
They map the entire life cycle. From the moment a candidate clicks apply on the website, to the personalized onboarding on day one, to their first cross-functional project, all the way to how they are treated during their exit interview when they become alumni. They rigorously isolate the moments that matter.
I would argue the moment that matters most, and perhaps the most universally dreaded corporate experience in the world, is the annual performance review.
Oh, everyone hates it.
Sitting in a tiny room while your boss reads a number from 1 to 5 to summarize the last 365 days of your life. It is anxiety-inducing, it generates mountains of paperwork, and it rarely helps anyone actually get better at their job.
And Adobe's HR leadership looked at the data in 2012 and quantified that exact frustration. They realized that preparing for and conducting these annual reviews was consuming 80,000 manager hours a year across the company.
80,000 hours of lost productivity.
Yes, and worse, the process was actively driving their highest performing employees to quit out of frustration over the rigidity of the rankings.
So what did they do? Did they just, tweak the form?
No, they did something radically strategic. They abolished the annual review entirely.
Just killed it.
Killed it. They replaced it with continuous check-in conversations. No more numerical ratings, no more bureaucratic rankings, just frequent real-time discussions focusing on goal alignment, feedback, and career aspirations.
But mechanically, how does a company operate without ratings? If there is no 1 to 5 score, how does a manager decide who gets a raise or a promotion?
They decentralized the power. They trained managers to make discretionary decisions based on market value and business impact, rather than relying on some arbitrary math formula.
See, here's where it gets really interesting to me. By deleting a classic bureaucratic HR process, Adobe's HR team actually gained immense power and leverage.
Oh, absolutely.
They saved 80,000 hours, they significantly reduced the turnover of their top engineers, and they shifted the entire company's focus toward enabling future success instead of dwelling on the past.
But implementing a change like that highlights a critical structural reality. An HR leader cannot just wake up on a Tuesday, walk into the boardroom, and announce they are canceling performance reviews for 20,000 employees based on a gut feeling.
Right, they'd be laughed out of the room.
Exactly. To execute that level of change, they need undeniable leverage, and they gain that leverage through data science.
It's wild to think of HR utilizing hardcore data analytics, but we are seeing it everywhere now.
We call it workforce analytics. Google's Project Oxygen is the benchmark here. The engineering leadership at Google initially assumed that management was largely useless and that technical expertise was the only thing that mattered in a team leader.
Spoken like true engineers.
Right. But HR didn't argue with them using psychology. They argued using math. They applied rigorous statistical analysis to years of employee surveys, performance metrics, and nomination data to identify 8 specific actionable behaviors of highly effective managers.
So they could go to the executive team and say, hey, We aren't launching this management training program because we feel like it. We're doing it because the math guarantees a return on investment.
Exactly. They proved that human behavior could be optimized with the exact same mathematical rigor applied to the search algorithm.
That is fascinating.
The data is the key to the boardroom. But the ultimate ceiling for HR's impact always comes down to the CEO. The CHRO must speak the language of the business finance, market analysis, competitive positioning.
Because if they only speak in HR jargon about engagement metrics, they will just be marginalized.
Right. And conversely, the CEO must empower the CHRO as a true equal.
So listener, think about the org chart at your own company right now. Where does the top HR person sit? Do they report directly to the CEO, sitting shoulder to shoulder with the chief financial officer?
Or are they buried 3 levels down?
Right. Reporting to the chief operating officer or legal counsel, that placement tells you exactly how your company views its people. Because if HR is buried, your company still views human beings as an expense to be managed. If they are at the top, your company understands that people are the strategy.
That structural partnership is really the crux of Dr. Westover's research. When the CEO and the CHRO form a unified front, the organization builds capabilities that cannot be replicated by simply tweaking a supply chain or adjusting a marketing budget.
We have covered incredible ground today. We've seen how HR has evolved from personnel administration into the strategic architect of a company's very survival.
It's a massive shift.
Yeah, by aligning the people strategy directly with the business strategy, whether that is through mapping capabilities for a pivot to oncology, killing the toxic stack ranking system, or utilizing heavy data science to prove the value of a good manager, organizations achieve undeniable financial success.
And they innovate faster.
Exactly. Their employees are deeply engaged and they can weather massive disruptions.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave a final thought drawn from the source material. It's a concept we haven't touched on deeply yet, but it is incredibly relevant to the daily physical reality of work.
Okay, what is it?
It is the concept of physical and digital environment design as a core HR strategy.
Ah, like the actual blueprints of the office.
Exactly. So look around your workspace right now. Whether you are sitting in a gray cubicle, an open-plan office designed to force collisions between departments, or even if you're remote, looking at the specific layout of Slack channels and digital collaboration tools on your screen.
None of it is an accident.
None of it is accidental. How might your organization's HR leadership have subtly designed your physical and digital environment to shape your daily habits, your communication patterns, and ultimately, your company's culture? Are you working in the space, or is the space working on you?
Oh, wow. Are you working in the space or is the space working on you? That is a phenomenal question to ponder because at the end of the day, someone drew up the blueprints for your daily routine. You just have to figure out if your HR department is acting like the building inspector, ticking off compliance boxes, or if they are the lead architect designing an environment where you can do your best work.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking closely at the systems around you, keep questioning the world, and we will catch you next time.